Hello everybody, welcome to our weekly Music Talk Live. Saturday 6:30, that's when we meet, and I hope you're all well. And today, as you have gathered, I'm not actually here in person, and I have to record this video beforehand because I will not be able to make it this Saturday. As you know, we always get together every Saturday at 6:30 p.m. Central European Time for music talk, which usually is a guitar lesson. We've been going through the modes lately. Sometimes we talk about music production, sometimes about composition, sometimes I just answer your questions. And I was going to make a video on music and guitar books for a long time. I did one years ago, and it was very well received, but then I thought, it's enough if you've done it once. But with time, I think it's good to sometimes go back and review things. So I'm going to talk about some music books that I enjoy, and as always, please feel free to use the chat room because it will be available on this video, and I will try to participate. Now, I can't guarantee right now that I'll be able to, but if I can, I will make sure to join. The thing is, I won't be able to actually make the video. Okay, I don't know exactly where and how I will be, although I'm fine as far as health goes. Don't worry about it. But this year there might be some changes. Nothing that will affect us directly, but there will be changes, some interesting stuff too. And so once in a while I might have to kind of prepare for those changes, and maybe very seldomly, but sometimes we'll have to do videos like this. It's not the first time that we pre-record them, and usually it goes very well, so I hope it's the same today. As always, please, if you're new here or if you're catching up later, do subscribe to the channel. It really helps out a lot. Check out the guitar chord series that I do every Tuesday. I think the response to that has been amazing, as far as the people liking it and letting me know that it's very useful for them. So check that out. I will post a link somewhere. And what else? Let's get started. So guitar books are a big deal, right? Because I'm a big proponent, even though I teach guitar as well, and I do these videos for you, which kind of is teaching. I always feel that, and I really think that the true learning comes from the student. So a good teacher will be able to guide the student. It will be able to save the student a lot of time if that's an issue. Like when I started out, I would play all day, every day, so 12 hours a day. And then time is less of an issue, I guess, because you kind of have time to spare, in a sense. When you're older, it gets more difficult, right? Because you have a job, maybe you have a family, and every hour you take away from that, then it has to be fully taken advantage of. So it's important that somebody can guide you and tell you, you should do this and you should do that. And everything you're doing wrong, let me tell you, because I've seen it 1,000 times. Let me tell you what you're doing wrong so that you can improve it and not waste time. Okay, so that is something that's certainly important. But in the end, when it comes to really, truly learning, it's up to you. It doesn't matter how good your teacher is or how great of material he gives you. It doesn't do anything unless you study it. So books are a big deal because even if you don't have a teacher, but if you have the discipline and the will and the power to do it, you will be able to get a lot out of them. Now, the problem with books is they're a bit everywhere, right? So maybe one book deals with this and the other book deals with that, and what you need is a bit of this and a bit of that, and you don't know quite how to match them because you're a student. So it's totally normal. And so the books I'm showing you today are books that are, I think, very useful and that you could do yourself. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't get a teacher. As a matter of fact, if you can, you probably should. It will save you a lot of time. I didn't get a teacher when I started out. My family just wasn't, we weren't used to the fact of playing music. So getting a music teacher really wasn't something we thought about. Even me, I was like, I'll do it myself. It simply wasn't something that was contemplated. Not like my parents didn't want me to have a teacher. It just never happened. I was at the swimming pool pretty much all day, every day, and training. And then when I got home, I would play guitar until I fell asleep on it. And that was it. Never really came up. So I was thrust into actual professional playing very, very soon. I was 15 or 16 at the most, and I was already playing out with a band, original material, And so I just kind of didn't have time. And then when I realized I didn't know anything, I could kind of survive a live situation, and I could survive a studio situation. I had street smarts as far as music went, but I lacked a lot of knowledge. And so when I started composing music outside of the band, I knew that I had so much missing. But by that time, I think I already had a kind of a certain level by which I could then study myself. And I always had I don't want to call it discipline, because discipline is like something you don't want to do and you have to do it, but discipline in a broader sense. So it always fascinated me, everything I did with the guitar. So I never had a problem spending 10 hours on something. I could play an exercise for hours. I can still do that. I can still record a little bit of music like this for a song, and I can go over it for like 4 hours. Even if it's just 10 seconds or 15 seconds of music, I'll just play it, and I don't even know what happens, and 4 hours are gone by. All right, so if you are in that frame of mind, that you can take care of yourself as far as discipline goes, these books will help you out. And in either case, they're still good, even if you just want to just take it easy and read them slowly. So the first one, I'm going to do it first, because I've talked about this so many times, I don't want to repeat myself too much. But this is a book you have to get. I can't make a video on books and not give you this. All right, so we'll do it first. It's Mick Goodrick, of course, The Advancing Guitarist. Great book. Advanced, yes, but not out of reach. So it does ask for a lot of your time and a lot of your effort, but it doesn't mean that it's it's not unfair. It's not an unfair book. It will give you what you need, but just that, nothing else. So it will kind of point the way, but it won't give you any more than that. And things I got from this book. Now, this book I studied in depth. And the thing is the good thing about this book is that it doesn't really, Mick Goodrick doesn't want you, I think, to be him. He doesn't want to influence you beyond giving you the material, which is something I believe in teaching. Teaching should be, you give me the tools, and that's it. Let me use the tools. And I don't want to be one of those, like a lot of teachers, but it's true. I've seen a lot of students that come from teachers who, and this happens all over the world, because I see them with my live students and I see them with my online students. And sometimes I'm like, why are you playing that? Well, they kind of play because they think they have to play because their teacher plays like that, or their teacher told them one thing. And that's a very fine line to walk between giving information and telling you how to use the information. So this book does a great job and not telling you how to use it. He says, well, do this, do that, try this, try that. And it's extremely interesting. And so it goes over a few things that will probably require you to either expand on it by yourself or get a teacher. Like the modes are not explained in depth, but that's why our videos are here, I guess. And then it goes straight into playing on only one string, which I'm a big proponent of. And I really dug deep into it because I was already doing it, but then when I saw this book, I'm like, okay, so I'm not crazy, let me see what this guy says. And he does it in great depth. One string, two strings, goes into intervals very quickly, and it puts you into the triads very quickly as well, so all triads in a very complete way. Sometimes it seems crazy what he asks of you, but it all makes sense, and it's all something you can do. It just seems impossible, but it is not, And so the triad, it shows you how to create different chords. There's stranger chords, 4-part chords, there's harmonization in fifths, and so on. And then it gives you a few ideas how to use it. Now, towards the end, it goes more towards a style of music that maybe is not yours. So there's a lot of uses of certain progressions that certainly sound a bit jazzy, some chords that might be out of my own, not maybe out of my reach, like I know how to use them, but I probably wouldn't use them in my music. So I use that just as a, I kind of drink from the fountain of harmony, and then I will see later, right? I don't have to use them. I just have that sound in my head, and it can come in handy. I could apply the sound to a different chord, or I could, maybe I would never use this chord here in a rock song, maybe a 7 altered sound. But what if I just put those altered notes on top of a simple chord in one of my songs? You see what I mean? Or one of your songs, or one of your solos, right? Have that unexpected note, and you know that you can do it because you studied it. So that's so even though it does go a bit far towards the end of the book, it's still useful. So I suggest you do all of it. Now, some pages can be intimidating, right? And some pages also can be intimidating when you look at them like that. And so one thing that I would say about this book is that you do need to know a little bit of music theory, just a little bit of reading. You have to know how to read the notes, but that's something you can actually learn doing this. I learned it when I decided that I wanted to transcribe all of Vivaldi for guitar, before I realized how much Vivaldi there was. I was a kid, but I learned how to read music by doing that. So you can do it with this easily. All right, and then there's a third section with commentaries and different short essays that he does on how to practice, and very short one sentences that you can use to become inspired. And some of those are a bit crazy, some of them are a bit silly, but in a good way. And it's a great book. So do get this book. By the way, I'm not even affiliated with Amazon, so I don't care if you buy it. I mean, I care about you, but I'm not doing this for anything. I'm just sharing it, all right? So I don't think I will provide links. I won't go that far as to put Amazon links that I don't get anything out of, but you can find it anywhere, all right? I don't even know if you like Amazon. Some people don't like it. They prefer Book Depository, or they prefer Awesome Books. Whatever it is, it's a good book. All right. So this is all mixed styles, right? So we'll jump from music to this, for example. This is a great book. It's Building a Recording Studio. Now, when I bought this, there wasn't many options. I think there was only this one and another one. Now there's more, and of course on the internet there's more information. But this book has come in so handy because every time I move somewhere, I build a studio. And even though it goes into detail about materials, and sometimes you can't control, you see it shows you should build this or you could build that, right? And in this place, we could start from scratch and use concrete and so on. But even if you can't, this will give you an idea of how things work. So if you move into a house or your own house and you say, I'm going to put a studio here, what's going on? So you can figure out what kind of floor you have, what kind of construction. And then when you know it, you'll know what kind of soundproofing, what kind of sound, well, for soundproofing, that's it, right? And then you go, okay, well, I only have this, so I would need something stronger. I can't do it, but then I will have to kind of figure something out, so it would make you aware of the situation you're in. Or if you're buying something new, well, perfect, it will make you aware of what is desirable. So if you're looking at two houses and one of them has a big basement made of concrete and the other one has an attic made of wood, then you kind of know where you're going. Other than that, it also explains a lot of stuff about the fundamentals of sound. So for some of you, this will be very simple, but it gives you frequencies for the main instruments and explains why it's important. Some frequencies absorb better than others. Some frequencies have a long development and they can basically travel through anything. And so what to take care of, what you should be aware of. It shows you how to kind of build a studio depending on whatever you can do. If you can't if you can't change the wall, maybe you can put in a new door. If you can't put in a new door, maybe you can put in something that will stop the sound from leaking, and so on. So it can be tailored to your needs. It's incredibly useful. It shows you the difference between a hollow door and what's it called? A hollow core and solid core doors. Why you would want one or the other. One only. You want the second one, right? You want the solid core, and then windows and so on. I use this a lot, and all this I made myself, except for the actual building. Just a few things I had made, but otherwise I condition all this by myself, and it sounds great. And I could do it for very little money if you know what you're doing. And this book was great for that. Okay. And then, of course, it doesn't stop here because that would be stupid, right? Then what am I going to do with the room? And then it gives you examples of live rooms, dead rooms, what you can do to do it, and he's by the way, Jeff Cooper is the author. All right, I feel bad now that I hadn't said it before. Let's give credit where it's due. And he knows that a lot of people use home studios, and in a home studio you don't even have a live room and a control room. Well, he will talk about that too. Okay. And this, along with all the other resources, will make you kind of an expert in sound recording. I mean, in sound studio building. He also talks about absorption and that stuff, but for that, I think there's more information out there. I think for absorption and diffusion, there's a bit more material out there. But as far as the actual construction, you know how many times I've been asked, what kind of foam do I use to stop the sound from coming in? It's two different worlds. One is soundproofing, the other one is sound conditioning. and he makes it very clear. And I don't know, I think it's a great book. All right, so a bit out there, right, out of left field, but now go back to music, and let's see, why don't we talk about these? Okay, so this is the first one, and then I talk about the additional two books. This is, can you see it? Okay, so this is The Theory of Harmony by Schoenberg, and you know it because you're afraid of it. A lot of people are like, oh my God, Schoenberg. And this is the book. This is the book on harmony that has been said to be old, has been said to have been surpassed by other books, but really everybody always goes back to, not everybody, but you know what I mean, you always go back to Schoenberg. It's a surprisingly, it's famous for being a bit thick, right, and a bit hard to get into, but to me it was not. To me it was extremely clear. He chats a bit, but keep in mind this is from the beginning of the last century, so it's still so contemporary to me. I'm not into the crazy contemporary music, but this still goes into, pretty deep stuff. And when this ends, then I think you can probably pick it up with a good jazz book. If you're into that, stranger harmony. When this ends, you're kind of at the beginning of the evolution of that. And if you get a comprehensive theory book on jazz, which I'm not going to give you today, but there is one called Theory of Jazz, I think, or Jazz Theory. It's a very famous book. I think it's Mark Levine. And that book, and I read it, but I don't consider it one of my fundamentals. Although it's, well, anyway, this one will get you very far. This especially if you're into, for two reasons. One, if you're into harmony beyond the guitar. The guitar, for the way it's built, and in rock music especially, we tend to use the guitar as a chord machine, right? We play chords, and we worry about the function of the chords, but not necessarily at how they are flowing from one to the other, right? And there's a lot to be said about that. So you can certainly use it for guitar. I really use it because I'm very interested in also orchestration, and I'm very interested in using proven methods of classical music, of harmony, towards other kinds of music. Could be just piano playing, or keyboards, or synths, or electronic, or even with the guitar, I can apply it. So it's extremely interesting to me. Beyond that, it will still give you a great history of how harmony began, literally from how, okay, well, what would be the first interval that ever occurred to a person, and how would they manage it? Why is this note not sounding good? He was one of the first one who say, well, maybe it's because of the harmonic series. Nobody really quite knew then. And, he talks about it, and then he gives you right away, he tells you, do this, go from one chord to this chord, the root is in the bass, figure out all the permutations. Now do it again with the first inversion, and so on. So it starts pretty accessible. I don't know why people say that it's not. It's very easy in the beginning. And he goes into seventh chords really right away. The nomenclature he uses, of course, is a bit different. So inversions have a name that is common in classical music, not so much for us. And then he goes into more difficult chords. He talks about the dominant chords, the secondary dominant chords. He talks about the diminished chord. He talks about the Napolitan or Neapolitan, whatever spelling you want to use, chord. He uses a lot of devices that are still in use today, not in jazz only, but in actually pop music, right? It's all here. And it's a bit hard, maybe, but this will make you study even harder, because there's no other way. There are other books on this. One of my favorites also is by Walter Piston. Is a bit more direct in teaching style. Persichetti has another one, but I don't know, I really like this one. Maybe I'm a bit of a, I like pain or something. I don't think so, but this is, I like this book. I read it twice. Once studying it, and the other one just kind of transcribing it for myself. And it's a wonderful book. I think you should all read it. And I'm going to put it down. And as an ancillary to that, we're going to have to talk really quickly about these two. Okay, these two are in this order. So this one is structural functions of harmony. Schoenberg, after writing that book, kind of evolved his thoughts on music theory and on harmony. Harmony meaning the use of chords and the interaction amongst chords. And this is this book assumes you know that one. And it has a bit of a summary in the beginning of what he talked about in the other one. But really, I think you should study that one first and then move on to this. And it's rich in examples. So either you can play them on a piano, or you should certainly either program them on your computer or just find the sources for this. But some of these are examples that are not from classical works. So you should be able to play these somehow on the guitar, or on a piano would be best, because that's how it's set up. You see there's a piano score here for all the examples. Okay, but this, what it does is it expands a little bit on the on the relations between chords, how you manage those relations, and modulations. It's heavy on modulations, which, by the way, is a big topic on theory of harmony, and something that a lot of composers or guitarists don't really quite grab. So they do modulate, and sometimes to great effect, sometimes not so great effect. But having an understanding of how it works, it really helps. I'm always been a big fan of modulating. As a matter of fact, a lot of my songs go through different keys, and I've done it both ways. I've done it by knowing nothing at the beginning. I've done it because I thought, since I studied it, I should do it, right? And then finally, eventually, you learn how to do it naturally, but it's all here, right? So you don't think about what you know, but you have it. And that's the best way. It's like the guitar, right? If you practice your technique, you don't have to think about everything every single time, but you know you have it. And that's a secret, all right? And so this takes us to this. This is another very well-regarded book, and it's a classic book, and it's the fundamentals of music composition. So this takes basically the harmony ideas and everything he has, and he uses it to teach you how to compose music. And he starts from the very beginning, from a phrase, from the smallest. I can read it from here. The smallest structural unit is the phrase, a kind of musical molecule consisting of a number of integrated musical events, possessing a certain completeness and well adapted to combination with other similar units. Right? One phrase, and there's everything you need to know about the phrase. And right away, it gives you example. Mozart, Beethoven, it gives you Haydn, Wagner, Brahms. And it's amazing how much you can learn just by studying this, right? And then it goes up to the motive, right? So when phrases evolve into motives, it gives you the ideas how you can modify phrases backwards, mirror playing and all that. That's pretty basic. Reduction, omission, and then connecting motives and so on. And then it goes on into the different forms, sonatas and all that, and then works a bit on accompaniment, when and how you need the accompaniment, the themes, and then again the small forms and the large forms up to symphonies, and see the scherzo, the sonata, rondo, okay, the allegro, and so on. And very important book. And as a matter of fact, I'm a bit weird, but I can read this in bed, and I like it. It's I can just read it for pleasure, and it's a good book. It's a good book, and it's not badly written at all. Now, before we continue, I'm not going to go into all the orchestral books that I like. I like the orchestration books by Piston. I like the orchestration book by Forsyth, but I won't get into it because it kind of goes that way too much, right? This is certainly applicable to your guitar playing and to your composition as far as songwriting. The other ones, orchestration, it's a bit of a stretch, so I don't want to get into all that stuff, right? So I'm going to keep it a bit tighter. Okay, next. Okay, music reading for guitar. Now, I have to preface this by saying I'm sure it's a great book, it works, but it's not that I'm a big fan of this book specifically. It's the only one I ever got on sight reading for guitar. So I'm not an expert on how many books are there and which one is the best one. This worked. As I said before a few times during our live streams, when I was about 19 or 20, I decided that I was going to learn how to read music. I said, this is impossible. How can I not know how to read music? You are useless. You're going to learn, and you're going to learn now. And so I spent a whole summer, 8 hours a day, reading music. And before, at the beginning, I did it with just scores, but then I said, no, I'm going to get a book. So I went out, I think it was in Stockton. I went to Barnes & Nobles, I think, or something, bought this book, and I went through it, the whole thing. See, I'm at the end, and it's all marked. So I did the whole thing, and I did it in a summer. And by the end of the summer, I could read music, and then I never used it. I was never in the situation where I was going to use it. In my head, I was thinking, well, you're going to be a studio session player or something, or I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. but it's coming so handy because even though now probably I wouldn't be able to sight read on guitar as well as when I was studying 8 hours a day, I have a deep knowledge of the relationship between the guitar and the musical score and the actual notation, and that's invaluable. You know, that's incredibly useful. Every concept I hear about music theory, about composition, about all the stuff we talked about, to me it's immediately translatable to the guitar. And I think I owe a lot of it to this. So that's why I'm suggesting this book. This book, by the way, is called Music Reading for Guitar, and it's by David Oakes. Again, I'm sure there's plenty of other options, but this works, and I'm not a complicated guy. You know, if something works, I use it, and that's it. By the way, I hope you can see well. I'm talking into the camera, and I have to use the front-facing, the FaceTime camera, just because I want to make sure I'm not recording like this, and you don't see anything. So today I didn't want to risk it. It's a long video, and I don't want to shoot it twice. Okay, so hopefully you can see this all right. But it's David Oakes. And again, it starts very easy. It starts in open position, or first position, that is called in sight reading. Yeah, it tells you how to read, gives you a few tips on, you can read in the right order, you can read backwards, you can read crisscrossing. This is something that's very useful. You can use it in many other methods of learning. It goes into rhythm. This might be easy for a lot of you in the beginning, but then it gets pretty complicated. And that's one thing I wanted to talk about this book. Besides actually learning the notes and where they are and how to play them, one thing you really learn is rhythm. So as soon as you see a rhythm, ta 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 ta, you can hear the rhythm. And that's one thing actually I almost forgot to talk about, but it's incredibly important, because when you improvise, I see, as a matter of fact, I was with a student yesterday and I told him, improvise over this. And the monotony of the rhythm was what killed his improvisation, not the notes. It was never the notes. The notes was fine, but the monotony of movement. There was no movement. There was nothing. There was just pam 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 pam, and there was no rhythmic variation. So I played the same notes he played. I said, try this, right? Play different. Use rhythm. Where do you want to go? Do you want to go there? Do you want to come back? Do I want to make you feel that we're kind of stumbling? Are we running somewhere? Are we jumping? Are we happy? Are we flying? Whatever. How do you do that? And so I thought of it yesterday actually about this book, because I said, you know what? One thing that really came in handy was learning how to read rhythms, because as soon as you learn how to, when you learn something for real, then it goes here and you have it anytime. And as always, you don't think about it when you use it, but you have all these options. You go, oh, now I want this, now I want that. And you associate certain rhythms with certain feels. The same as with the modes that we look at almost every week here in these videos. You should interiorize so well the mode that you have access to it whenever you want. You don't have to think, oh, Lydian. No, you don't think that. You think of the sound. You think of that sound. And if you don't want to name it, augmented fourth, that doesn't matter. It's a sound that counts. All right, move on. I might be going too fast, but you don't have to learn anything, so I'm gonna go fast through it so we don't have the longest video in the history of YouTube. Here it is, Joe Pass Guitar Chords. Now this book is crazy. I think I got this book when I was a kid. I think I read an interview in a magazine, because let me tell you something if you're too young for that, but back then when I was a kid, you had to go to the kiosk, or whatever you call it, to the newsstand, and buy Guitar Player magazine, which in Italy was called Chitarra or something like that, and it was pretty expensive. So we used to buy it all together as friends, and then we would pass it along 1 week each. And in an interview with Joe Satriani, he said he learned chords. He said I was 15 at the time. I remember I was 16, and he said I learned chords from a little pamphlet that he got in what was it, in Long Island, I think. And he said, I learned chords with this pamphlet, and that pamphlet is impossible to find. But then he said, but then I really learned chords with this little book by Joe Pass. So we were thinking, what is the little book by Joe Pass? And we went to a bookstore, a big music bookstore, Ricordi, in Milan, in the big gallery by the Duomo. In case you want to look it up, it's cool. And they had a bunch of Joe Pass books, and they were all like this. So we said, okay, which one is it? Which one are we going to buy? And eventually one of my friends bought this, and we went over it and we're like, okay, this is it. This is the one, because it has chords and it has no names, because that's what Joe said. There are no names, just sounds. And I'm like, well, that's dumb. Why would we want a chord book without names? But that's the point. The point is that you get used to sound as far as the function of the chords go, not as the name of the chord. But to a 15 or 16-year-old, that was too much, right? And so I kind of put it away. Well, it wasn't mine, but I kind of put it away from my mind. And then later on, when I was in America, I bought it again, and I went through it, and I said, don't ask questions, just study the book. And I would play it every day, the whole thing. Every day I would play the whole thing until it clicked. And I said, now I know what is going on. I know what's going on. I understand why I can use this chord or that chord. And so the book is divided into major chord forms. Then it has 7th chord forms. And then augmented, minor, and diminished. And that's it. That's all you got. And then it gives you a few progressions that he calls passages. So at the beginning I was like, what is a chord passage? I thought it was an official name for something, but no, it's just chord progressions. And substitutions. And it's a strange book, but and it's only $8. So I suggest you do the same that I did. You buy it and you go over it without thinking. And your mind will expand. Your chord mind. Your chord mind will certainly improve. All right? Joe Pass, guitar chords. Maybe I haven't sold this to you well enough, but it is worth it. Okay? Okay, let's move on to. Okay, you know what? This one. Now, I have to plug them, but I don't want to. But I will plug them because before I introduce this book, I will, plug my own 2 technique books for now. There's going to be more coming out, but the first 2 books are the alternate picking book and the legato book. Okay, so they're available down here. There's a little section in the description. You can buy them, and they're 100% focused on that particular technique. And I think they are extremely useful. I won't say any more. I don't want to sell you my stuff too much, but if you are having trouble with technique or you just want to, work on it, get them. All right, that's it. But I didn't have my own books when I was a kid. What I had was this. And this book, you won't find it, I'm afraid. And I'm not a proponent of downloading stuff, so, but maybe you'll find it secondhand or something. You have to figure that one out yourself. So I'm going to go quick on this because I don't think it's available. All the other books you'll find, okay? I checked. It's called Metodo per Chitarra Heavy Metal, Giacomo Castellano. He's an Italian guitar player. When I was a kid, I was starting out in the 90s. It's not like there was internet. So you went to the store and there was one guitar book, and luckily it was this one. And it has all the techniques. It has a chapter on each technique from, picking to tapping to some arpeggios, some phrases. It has a little bit of bend, very marginal, but still. And I went through this book all the time. I played all these exercises. As a matter of fact, I have notes here that I should be in school, but instead I'm doing this because somebody will call me to say, oh, tomorrow we have to bring this. And I'm like, okay, and I will write it here. So I wasn't studying, I was doing this. And as a matter of fact, I had that happen to me on the day of my final exam after high school. So the final big exam in Italy, when you had to know everything about all the 5 years you studied in all possible subjects, I was playing guitar the day before. And I got a call saying, you should be here at this time. And I'm like, okay. And I would keep playing. And I was playing Crossroads. I remember that. And so one day I'll show you. And see, this is a phone call that I got about something in school. And I said, okay, fine. Put it there and let's keep playing. So yeah, this is a good book for technique. It's not outdated. It is from the 90s. So, it says techniques of Steve Vai, Van Halen, Satriani, Malmsteen. But yeah, it's great. The only thing about the thing that joking aside, that I said about my books is that they're totally dedicated. So whereas I can have 85 exercises on legato, he kind of jumps in a bit heavier. And legato, for example, is a technique that I find people have a hard time because they jump in too quick. And if you don't give them the tools, then they get frustrated or they get a sloppy legato. But otherwise, overall, it's a great little book. But I'm afraid you won't be able to find it, but, look. And you'll find. Okay, what else? Not many more to go, I promise. Okay, so this is another one of the crazy ones. Chord chemistry. There's a lot of books that are famous for being so hard, and I haven't included them. I have a lot of them. I have the Slonimsky. I have all the strange books you can think of, and I actually read them. But I don't. Sometimes being difficult doesn't mean anything, right? Being useful does. And when you look at a book like this, when it's all A chords. Okay, so this is 2 pages of A chords. Just A, right? That's it, just A. So how many are there? 3, 6, 9, 12 by 3, 6. So it's 100. It's 240, 250 chords just in A, just to begin. This is the first page. Basically, the first page where there's anything is this one. And then you go, okay, that's not too bad, I can do it. And then you go, okay, but here's another page. This time they're in A again. This is all A, right? So you can add it. Look at that. A. Oh, now it moves to E, so it's better. But now it goes back to A again. And so you go like, why am I doing this? And the reason is that you're doing it not to memorize all these chords. Excuse me. You're doing it to gain control of the harmony of the guitar. Many of these chords are like, okay, I'll never use them, but it doesn't matter, you see? And he wrote it kind of an encyclopedia, but to me, it's been mind-blowing when I go through it. And you know, this is a bit scary. But you go through it, and you listen to each chord you play in a different voicing. If you've been watching the videos on guitar chords, you have noticed how I talk about some chords, especially how they change from one voicing to the other, from one inversion to the other, or one note you put anywhere. It changes a lot. And this really opens up your ear about it. And then some shapes, of course, stick with you. I've gotten a few shapes from this book, but it's not really the point, I think. The point is to understand the fretboard, how chords relate to each other, because there's a little bit on that. Not much, but there's a little bit on progressions. And, you know, voice leading, how you go from one chord to the other. There's a little bit of that. It's not a treatise on it, but it's a book that I suggest. Now, I don't know how much they are now. This was like, I bought it for $10 or something when I bought it. Now, I know there's a new edition, maybe, you know, got a bit out of hand. I have no idea what the price is, but it is worth it. So if you can afford the book on chords, this is it. Don't go for the easy ones. Go for this one. And be patient, okay? And as a little corollary to that, there's this. He made a lot of books, one on soloing, but this is the one, if you have a hard time absorbing that one, you can add this one or just go to this one. This has, of course, less chord shapes, and it jumps right in with chord progressions. And it is true that it repeats the same chord progression many times. Look, for example, this is a 1625, so basically a super common chord progression. And it gives you all these examples of how to play, and it's the same progression. That is true. So the point is still the same. You kind of have to go through it. But you can still jump into it and go like, okay, let me try this, or let me try that. And you see how many there are? It's the same progression. But again, if you don't expect much from it, like you don't expect something tomorrow, I think is extremely useful. And again, you can just go through it one line, or if you play 5 lines every day in a year, I don't know if you've completed it, but it's not stressful at all, and it's very beneficial. This guy, Ted Greene, he knows chords, all right? Or he knew chords. He passed away. And finally, this is something that I'm going to add because, again, there are so many books on jazz guitar, and this is probably not my favorite. It might not be my favorite book on jazz guitar, okay? But it's probably the one that I would suggest to everybody, okay? Because it's very accessible. It's by Joe Bell and Peter Pickle. It's called Improvising Jazz Guitar. It's more focused on lead, but it has a lot about chords and progressions. And sometimes for us non-jazz players, this can be quite, it can be arcane in a way, right? It can be difficult because we don't function like that in rock music. And classical is the same. We function, a lot of rock is parallel motion, whereas in classical harmony, that's like, no, don't do that, right? So, but it makes it easy, right? It gives you little chord charts. It keeps the notation to a minimum. It has tabs if you need them. Well, it's a kind of a hybrid format. And it gives you options on, for example, 2/5 changes, right? Most books are like, 2/5 changes are important. Here's 1,000 of them, which is fine. But he says, well, look at it this way. You could play like this. You can use 2/5 to modulate to a different key. You can do, he teaches you things that are useful. And the good thing about this book is that it doesn't go too far. So pretty much everything you study here can be applied to your style of music. You don't have to be a jazz guitar player. I would never call myself a jazz guitar player, Definitely not. I like jazz, and I know a bit of jazz, and I know how it works maybe, but I would certainly not be comfortable in a strictly jazz setting. Now, as I move far away from jazz, more into rock, fusion, you know, kind of at the border on this side, maybe at the border with the blues side, then I feel more comfortable, right? And this is a good bridge to kind of be moving from one end of the spectrum to the other. It talks about the jazzy blues and that stuff. So this book is another one that I would suggest. I think it's still in print. And yeah, that's it. I have so many more, but I think these are the ones that today, if somebody asks me, what should I get? And I'm like, well, what do you want to do? Chords? This one. Theory? That one. That's what I would suggest. Of course, this is a great video to ask you to write down on your comments, because it'd be very interesting to me to know what it is you like. Studying, and what books you have enjoyed. And don't feel bad if one of your favorite books is not here in the list. It probably is on my bookshelf, and I probably read it. But you know, I kind of picked them without thinking too much. I thought, let me just pick the first ones that I can think of, because sometimes that's the most natural way to do it, and it kind of corresponds to what I'm really thinking at the moment. If I were to do it in a year, it maybe would be different. But these are the ones that right now I would suggest. So I guess this is it. 40 minutes, kind of as usual, but without the Q&A. If you have questions, use the comments, and I will read them, of course, and answer. I want to thank you all for your support. Let me go to this really quickly. But I've been enabling a support system that doesn't use Patreon, because, again, I want all my information to be out there and not behind a paywall. So even though I totally understand why Patreon is a good idea, but not for this. You know, and because everything I put out should be for everyone. But if you want to contribute, these videos do take quite a bit of time and effort and cost. And so if you want to contribute, there's a link down in the donate button. You can do it monthly, like some of you have. Thank you very much. Or just a one time only. You can do as little as possible, as much as you want, or nothing, because I don't mind. You know, you can be here and enjoy the videos, and that's enough for me. You can listen to the music, you can buy the records, it's all down there. Do whatever you want, okay? Or don't do anything, just go buy books and study. Whatever you want to do is fine with me, but just so you know, that info is out there. I would ask you to subscribe if you haven't done so, because it really helps out to reach more people. And I want to thank you all for the great support through the time. You know, just being here and letting me know that this is useful is great, because sometimes it's a lot of work, and I wonder if people are, you know, like they are using this. Is this information useful? And all your comments, private or in the comments, that tell me that some of these videos have changed the way you practice, and they have improved your playing, and you know, all that stuff really pays off. All right, so thank you very much again. I will see you very soon. Next week will be a regular live stream, and we'll do a mode. Okay, so again, I pick one, and we'll finish the diatonic modes pretty quickly, and then we'll move on to stranger ones. And once in a while, I'll do a video like this to kind of switch it up a little bit. All right? Thank you very much again. That's it. I will see you next week. Bye-bye.